House whipping against Senator Bernie Sanders' war powers resolution that's set for a vote in the Senate tonight?
Look, we've spoken to this before. Don't have anything much more to add. I know my colleagues actually was asked this question last week. Don't have anything more to really discuss or lean into.
We really want you to lean in, though. Can you please explain why the Biden administration is fighting Senator Bernie Sanders on this Yemen wars power resolution, which would make it abundantly clear that the United States would not support the Saudi-led coalition into brutalizing the people of Yemen as they had been doing. Now, currently there's a ceasefire, but there's some concern that Saudi Arabia will no longer honor that ceasefire and that the war will continue, which would be disastrous. We should not be assisting Saudi Arabia or supporting Saudi Arabia in that war. And in the Trump administration, there was a bipartisan effort to do something about this. And believe it or not, Congress actually passed a resolution in a bipartisan manner to ensure that we no longer support the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen. But Donald Trump vetoed it. What's crazy now is it appears that Biden, a Democrat, is the one who's standing in the way here. And before we get to the details on how we got to the point we're in, let's hear a little more from Jean-Pierre.
Discuss or lean into on this.
Bernie Sanders just said that he's dealing with White House opposition to it right now. So just hoping for a confirmation of what all is going on there.
So look, I'll say this, we're in touch with members of Congress on this. Thanks to our diplomacy, which remains ongoing and delicate, the violence over nearly 9 months has effectively stopped. As we have seen during this administration, the situation is still fragile and our diplomatic efforts are ongoing. So we want to make sure that this is not impacted and the people of Yemen do not suffer or that any of the progress we have made is overturned. Again, I really don't want to get ahead of the progress. We continue to work with Congress on this. We're having the conversations. I just don't want to get ahead of that.
It sounds like he might veto that if it comes to his desk.
I'm just not going to make a prediction. I'm certainly not going to make a prediction of what the president is going to do, is not going to do. We're having conversations with members of Congress, and I will leave it there. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. I'm gonna get out of here. Get out of here as soon as possible. Okay, so Biden.
She fled.
She did flee, yeah. Now, Biden has been doing anything and everything to appease the Saudis, especially after Russia invaded Ukraine, especially after it became clear that the OPEC plus cartel was intentionally withholding production of, oil and gas, which increased prices at the pump and hurts Biden politically. We know that. And it's just been embarrassing because he has even decided to run cover for MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, who ordered the assassination and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi. Biden campaigned on making MBS a pariah for that and then ended up doing the exact opposite. In fact, provided immunity for MBS in an ongoing lawsuit against him for what happened to Khashoggi. It's just incredibly gross. And I'm gonna give you some more detail into what's been going on with Bernie and Biden behind the scenes. Before I do though, John, I was wondering what you think about all this.
Yeah, it's gross, as you pointed out. It would be one thing if you had gone from the era of bipartisanship in Congress under Trump, where they finally seemed like somebody wikied Congress and were like, oh, we're in charge of this stuff. We should do that some decade. To Joe Biden like campaigning that no, Saudi Arabia is great, we're not gonna do anything, that would be bad enough. But when Biden implied that he would be far stronger against Saudi Arabia and has done the exact opposite the vast majority of the times that he's interacted with them, both in terms of like person-to-person diplomacy as well as his effect on legislation, it's just so needless. Like, I hated almost every part of that Karine Jean-Pierre clip there. The way she started with
so did she, by the way.
I'll say this. No, don't give me that tone. We're asking you, you've talked to him. We're not asking you to make predictions either. Stop pretending that anyone is asking you to read like chicken entrails or something. You've talked to Biden. What did he say? Did he say he's going to veto it if it does pass? Or are you going on the record to say that he has not made clear what he's going to do? He has never talked about vetoing it. She doesn't want to say that. That's why she pretends pretends that someone's asking her to become like the seer or something, and then flees out the window as soon as she gets done answering. She talks there about not wanting violence to affect the people of Yemen. Well, really interesting how you're choosing to define violence. Like a bomb dropping right now, sure, yes, that is violence. A country that has been destroyed, that doesn't have functioning infrastructure, medical infrastructure as well, I would consider that violence too.
Yes.
And the chaos there is ongoing right now. Just stopping more bombs from dropping is an important part of it, I will grant you that. But stabilizing and repairing Yemen and saving so many people from, I know you're gonna talk about the spread of disease, cholera, famine, starvation, all of that. That's violence too.
I mean, the Saudi-led coalition continues the blockade, as you referenced, and that blockade is exacerbating all of the issues you mentioned, including the famine, the spread of disease. It's impossible to get humanitarian aid to the people of Yemen as a result of that blockade. It's disgusting, and to know that Biden went from campaigning on one thing to basically saying that he was gonna hold Saudi Arabia accountable and was gonna make MBS a pariah, to now doing everything he can to appease them is so, first of all, it sends a dangerous message. Because remember, Jamal Khashoggi was a writer over at the Washington Post. He was living in the United States. So the royal family in Saudi Arabia can just assassinate people who are United States citizens or residents if they don't like them with impunity. Is that what the federal government is communicating under the leadership of Joe Biden? Now, what's really going on behind the scenes? Well, recently the White House began privately whipping against Bernie Sanders' resolution on this, saying that President Joe Biden's aides would recommend a veto if the resolution does in fact pass in Congress, and that the administration was, quote, strongly opposed to the resolution.
Now, are you predicting that, or are you using information that is available already?
I'm using information that is thankfully available through excellent reporting over at The Intercept.
Oh, nice. That's probably better than just pretending you have to predict it.
Exactly, exactly. Here are some more details, okay? So the White House also distributed a collection of talking points arguing against the resolution, which was obtained by The Intercept. Here's an excerpt. The administration strongly opposes the Yemen War Powers Resolution on a number of grounds, but the bottom line is that this resolution is unnecessary and would greatly complicate the intense and ongoing diplomacy to truly bring an end to the conflict. In 2019, diplomacy was absent and the war was raging. That is not the case now. Thanks to our diplomacy, which remains ongoing and delicate, the violence over nearly 9 months has effectively stopped. Okay, yeah, so again, as I mentioned earlier, there was a UN brokered ceasefire. That ceasefire has now expired. So there is nothing standing in the way of violence erupting again. So to say like, no, we got it, bro. We want to destroy the possibility of this resolution passing because diplomacy.
Well, let's say that you were inclined to be as charitable as possible to the White House. It is not inconceivable that based on the status of the diplomacy that is both at the same time delicate and intense, which I think of as very different things, that passing something like this would throw it into chaos, or that the Saudis, whether it actually complicates things, would use it as a pretext to throw a hissy fit or whatever. That's fine, I can understand that might actually be the case if you assume that the only position that the US can negotiate with the Saudis from is a position of weakness. Like we're either like trying to stop like a scared dog from bolting, or that we're trying to stop a bear from charging us. I would argue that we have a position of strength that we could argue that we could.
Of course we do. We're supplying them the weapons.
He's the president. He could pretend that he understands how important and influential we are in world affairs, how much influence we can have over them, not only in direct arms sales, but the effect on their economy, the effect on their ability to interface with other countries throughout the world. That is a position of strength. And from that position of strength, you probably could have Congress do its constitutional role of being in charge of war powers without worrying about it throwing the whole thing into chaos.
Well, you know who agrees with you and disagrees with the White House's take on this?
Bernie?
Well, yeah, hopefully, yes. But the former special envoy for Yemen, so he disagreed with the White House's assessment, saying, quote, "There's been no diplomatic progress whatsoever. There's been no political process, no negotiations, or even a prospect of them. So an all-out war can resume at any time. There's been a lull in the fighting, but since there was no concerted effort to move the political process forward, the lull is a temporary one, and all sides are preparing for the worst. The situation is extremely fragile because Yemen has fragmented now, and you have different areas of Yemen under the control of different warlords."
Yeah.
Great, we should make the problem worse by continuing to support Saudi Arabia, maybe even give them another round of weapons. Why not? Why not? Because we need that oil. By the way, if you're experiencing, and I think you can make a case for this as president of the United States, if there is a crisis, a national crisis related to inflation impacting prices at the pump, right? You could temporarily nationalize the energy companies. You could.
He's not even a tax on profits.
But he'd rather get down on his knees and fillet the Saudis instead.
Okay.
And that's what a weak president does. Just keeping it real. We produce more oil and gas. We produce the most oil and gas of any country in the world. Republicans will lie to you and they'll tell you it's because the reason why gas prices are high is we don't have energy independence. Nah, we actually don't have energy independence because we, the people, don't own the resources. Multinational corporations do, and they sell it on the world market to the highest bidder. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, and really fast to be clear, although your experience may vary, like mine does. Nationally, gas prices are lower than they were a year ago. They're like 15 cents less than they were a year ago.
They are right now.
It still sucks right here, but yeah. So and look, maybe he would use that as an argument too. Well, we don't want to cause them to change that situation. I don't know. We're already past the midterms, buddy. Like think about someone other than your own political standing. There are people literally dying, and many more are fated to if we don't stop the status quo in Yemen, which is incredibly chaotic. It is not conducive to human life.
To your point, 23.4 million people in Yemen, almost 3/4 of the population are in need of humanitarian assistance. An estimated 77% of the 4.3 million people displaced in Yemen are women and children. One woman dies every 2 hours during childbirth in Yemen. This is what we're aiding and abetting. This is what our government is aiding and abetting. So this is a long way of making the Saudis a pariah. The enabling of this is just disgusting, and I don't care if we're talking about a Democrat president or a Republican president, I don't care. When it comes to these kinds of matters, whether we're talking about economic issues or definitely foreign policy issues, I hate how much we see in similarities between the two parties. Was very critical of Trump for vetoing the resolution under his watch. Definitely gonna be critical and have been critical of the Biden administration for pretty much doing the same.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.